Gabrilowicz looked out over the ocean at Felicity Bay and breathed deep in the salty air. Though she'd visited the coast every summer for her entire life, the way the water shimmered in the early evening never failed to soothe her soul. She could watch the light flicker for hours, hear the gulls squawk in the distance, and listen to the slap of wave against hull until she was fast asleep, collapsed on the deck with no thought of tomorrow. Not wanting to stress herself, Lena had dropped anchor only 200 yards offshore, just far enough to feel the wide ocean's pull at her keel. How great it would be to stay out on the water alone forever, with no one to lay a guilt trip on her whenever she wanted a little quiet time. "Go, get out and have fun with the other kids," Dad kept nagging. "You only get so many weeks of vacation before you have to hit the books again." Oh yeah, the books. One more item on her list of things I never want to hear again. But when your dad's a high school history teacher and your mom, well, Lena didn't want to think about Mom right now. It would have spoiled the mood. But as the water called out to Lena again, it tugged on the memory of her last summer with Mom 4 years ago. "Hey, your dad's got some beers in the fridge," yelled Callie Ann from inside the cabin. So much for solitude. Not that Lena could complain. She was lucky to be out on the water at all. That is, it had seemed like luck at first. Bored out of her mind, she'd asked Dad if she could take the catboat cruiser out, never expecting him to say yes, and never guessing he'd toss her the marina keys in one fluid motion. Usually, Dad was kind of a klutz, but not tonight. Tonight, he had the reflexes of a cheetah. "Just don't go out alone," he'd said, resting his rope-rough hands on her shoulders. Lena was so thrilled she was halfway to Callie Ann's beach house before it hit her. Dad had a date with that florist, Rhea Silver. He'd invited her over for dinner and everything. "So, what's the deal?" called Callie Ann. "Should I pop open a couple?" "Don't even think about it," shouted Lena. She'd get grounded for sure, out here on the bay when there was nothing to do as it was, and 100 times less to do if you couldn't even go out of the house. "Loser," said Callie Ann, hauling herself out of the cabin. "Come on," said Lena. "Check out the view. It'll be sunset soon." "Forget it," said Callie Ann, slipping off her sneakers. "I'm swimming to shore. You can snooze out here all you want." Before Lena had a chance to react, she was already getting splashed by Callie Ann's swan dive into the ocean. Lena ran to the other side of the deck in time to see her best friend swimming rapidly ashore. With anyone else, you might be worried, but Callie Ann Connors had been captain of the state champion swim team for the last 2 years. The girl had some serious skills in the water, and a lust for risk-taking Lena had seen so far only in boys. Callie Ann pulled herself up onto the beach and waved to Lena. Her clothes drenched, her hair matted with seaweed, Callie Ann still managed to look like a swimsuit model. Good thing she lived just a few yards back from the water's edge, Lena thought, casting a worried eye along the shoreline. God forbid those college boys jogging along the beach saw her, drenched, her t-shirt clinging. "Hold it! What was that?" As Callie Ann ran off home, Lena's head whipped around seaward at the explosive crack of what sounded like a sonic boom. And that made no sense. Sure, inexperienced pilots got themselves twisted up flying over the ocean once in a while, but none of them, she was pretty sure, were going faster than the speed of sound. As the sky started to darken for nightfall, the ear-snapping sound of a second sonic boom was preceded by a thin streak of orange light heading straight into the ocean at a 45-degree angle. "No way, that was an airplane," Lena said to the sky. And in the space of that tiny moment of reflection, she realized she had a problem on her hands. With Callie Ann gone, Lena was out on the boat alone. She should turn back, but gross. By now, Dad and Rhea were probably making out on the sofa. Even if she hadn't wanted to spoil it for him, the thought of seeing 2 middle-aged people wrapped around each other, she'd rather eat sea snails for breakfast. So what could she do? Considering the ruckus of the sonic boom and the piercing orange light that followed it, Lena was sure the Coast Guard would have been out there by now. But what was she thinking? The World Cup was on. Could be the Coast Guard was distracted. Could be she was grasping for straws. Lena had known the guys at the Coast Guard Marina for years, ever since Dad decided he'd rather run a tour boat off Felicity Bay every summer than teach summer school back in Skudderton. It was the one thing Mom had never let him do. Anyway, Captain Halpern wouldn't allow soccer to get in the way of policing the bay, even if this was the first year the American team could be taken seriously. But where was he? Looking out over the water where the plane, if that's what it was, had gone down, Lena realized something was wrong with her eyesight. No matter how she turned her head, she couldn't focus on the exact spot on the horizon where she'd seen the orange flame hit the water. The closer she got, the faster her gaze would bounce off toward a different point on the horizon. "Don't even think of hiding from me," she whispered. Summoning every ounce of concentration, she took her head in her hands and pointed it right at the spot in the ocean where... 30 minutes later, Lena awoke in the cruiser's cabin, lying next to the half-refrigerator, an empty can of beer held tight in each hand. Whoa! Not that she'd never had beer before, but never in such a totally uncool way. How would she explain the missing cans to Dad? More important, how could she explain them to herself? Clutching the arm of a small leather love seat, she pulled herself up to her feet.